welcome to your favorite news and current affairs program on television. This is today's review, and I am Ray Osazwa. As we do on the program, we'll show you tits and bits from our feature story segment. On that segment, we show you what the papers are saying all over the world, just in case you're so busy and you don't have the opportunity to go out there to get your own copy from seeing our tits and bits. You know what's going on around the world. Today, I've got guests in the house to talk about amazing topics from national dailies from all around the world. But I would introduce them when we come back from seeing our tits and bits from our feature story segments. We'll be right back. Okay, like I said, I've got some amazing people in the house to discuss with us today. I've got Antoine. Hello, Antoine.
Hi.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And I have Stella.
Hi.
Hello, Stella. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Today we'll be talking about several trending issues from national dailies from all around the world. But first, we're going to start with the ISIS issue. Now, this first one says ISIS orders Assyrian Christian hostages to convert to Islam, but all boldly refuse to deny Jesus Christ. Amazing. According to this article, on February 23rd, a terrorist group raided approximately 35 different Christian villages in the Asaka province and abducted somewhere between 263 to 373 men, women, and children. Now, two of the 200 plus Assyrian hostages kidnapped by the Islamic State have provided insight into their abduction in recent interviews, where one of them actually revealed that ISIS militants tried to force them to convert to Islam. But the report says that not even one of almost 373 hostages agreed. I think that is amazing. It just actually shows that it's a test of your Christian faith. It's amazing to see. The report further goes on to say that one of the hostages who's been freed now, he said they kept pressuring us to convert to Islam. In Egypt, there is a silent law, that it's there, even though it's not loud, but it's there, that actually refrains or, restrains you as a Christian, as a Muslim, to convert. So why, and I know that in most Islamic nations, these laws are there. I don't know if you get my point. So why on earth would, if a Christian, if a Muslim converts to Christianity, it's a big problem. But why would they be forcing Christians in the first place to even convert?
I think you could
Antoine.
even compare this to a genocide, because you have two types of genocide. You have a genocide where you try to kill a whole people, or a genocide where you try to kill a type of people, whereby you kill their religion. So if you're trying to force all the Christians in your country to convert, it's like you're trying to rid them from your country. And you have to just give praise and respect to the people who are saying no, who are staying strong to their faith and continuing to keep believing that their time will come and they will be freed. And sometimes we have to look what we can do as a people, what other countries are doing to help these people, because along history there's been times in which countries have stood still and allowed atrocities to happen. And right now, I think this is the biggest test of the world, because all over the Middle East and Arab world, ISIS is growing, their influence is getting stronger, and the things they're doing are getting worse. So what are Christian countries, what are just any country doing to help these people?
Stella, what can we do?
Okay, well, first of all, I would have to say that every nation has to stand up for the country right now, especially for the people. Like, obviously, for instance, we know this ISIS thing has been going on for a while. There are a lot of situations at the moment, but the Bible does tell us that trials and tribulations will come, a test of time, a test of our faith, and this is what we're seeing right now. Christians are going to have to go through some of these things.
Amazing. Okay. Would go to our next story. We're still talking about Christians in nations where it's predominantly Islam. Our next feature story says Pakistan Christian protest turns violent. Now, protest in Lahore by members of Pakistan Christian minority have turned violent, with police using tear gas and water cannon on the crowd. Demonstrators smashed cars and threw stones in response to the bombing of 2 churches by a Taliban splinter group on Sunday. The protest came as the death toll in Sunday's attack rose to 17. According to this report, Christians in Lahore make up less than 2% of Pakistani population, and many are among its poorest people. We just talked about Christians in Assyria being forced to convert to Islam, and here in Pakistan, Sunday here, there was 2 churches were bombed and 17 people dead. You were speaking to us earlier on. What, as Christians, what can we do? Because somebody could say, you know, Christians, fold your hands, God will fight your battle. What do you think we can do as Christians?
Well, in that situation, you know, Christians are being seen as humble, you know, calm, like you said, fold your hands, nothing but. I think I would say that as Christians, we do need to stand up. We need to stand up and say we refuse this, we will not allow it, accept it. But I don't believe violence is the way to achieve what you want at the end of the day. You understand? What they should have done is actually create a protest where they all stand up against whatever it is, against this bomb, against this blast, against this ISIS.
But is this biblical? Is this scriptural?
Yes, not to be violent. No, I wouldn't say to be violent and to start taking matters into your own hands, to start killing somebody. No, you should never take matters into your own hands.
But just to give the flip side argument of that, there's a person called Saint Aquinas who comes up with a theory called just war theory, whereby it's a just action for a Christian to defend another Christian, or to defend anybody, whereby, like, there's a difference between you step out of your house and you say to someone, look, I'm going to protest. I'm going to protest what's happening to me. So you step out with a noble action. That's what you want to do. You don't want to commit any violence. That's the motive. But you're then confronted with violence. So do you become peaceful and you get attacked, or do you defend yourself?
In this situation, initially it wasn't like they set out to, you know, create any kind of trouble. They just wanted their voices to be heard. But then you have police, you know, using tear gas and water cannon on them. So to a large extent, it wasn't like, oh, so they set out to create violence. But how do you respond when there's an attack on you as a Christian?
Okay, well, at the end of the day, you have to stand still. You have to stand still. I believe that you should stand still. Even when Stephen in the Bible was being attacked, he stood still and he said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing.
So in other words, the idea of the protest in the first place was not a correct move.
No, it wasn't. We need to follow the example that's already been laid before us, and which is already there in the Bible.
But then what about David and Goliath?
Wait, well, let's start with this. If people see this sort of example, they'll be moved and want to come and give their lives to Christ. Whereas, okay, for instance, now the story of David and Goliath. Now, they were in a battle. They were in a war. That was a war. There was a different. When it's the time of war, even now, you're allowed to fight. There's rules. You're allowed to fight because this was from one country with another country. So,
but isn't it some form of war? Outrightly bombing 2 places of worship. It comes across like war.
So then, but basically, what
they're doing is that they literally, what they should have done is grab the people, instead of killing them themselves, they should have held them.
No, but is that the case?
No, they were killed. So the question was, how should they react?
How should they react?
You see, what happened later on is that they went and they eventually started killing some other people as well. So
everything escalated. I see that point, but the point is, as a person, like you said, you have the laws of war whereby countries act, and if you're a country, you can defend another country. But I always think anything that happens internationally or on the societal level should also be looked at on the domestic level. So me as a person, my house is my home, so my house is my country technically. So if someone attacks me or attacks my home, I'm not just going to stand there and just allow them to be attacked.
Of course you
At
would
what
defend.
point
Of course you
is
would
it okay
defend.
for a Christian to defend himself?
Of course you would defend yourself at that point in time if there was a situation like that. So, as a Christian, as far as I'm concerned, they said that, you said, for instance, the police were throwing tear gases at them and so on.
And water cannon.
And water cannon. I would say the same thing. They should have stood still. They should have just stood still.
Will we use an example? Have you seen the film Selma?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, during the obviously Selma's a true story. So during the march with Malcolm X, with Martin Luther King, when he's marching, the initial.
Oh, yes, I've watched that. Okay, basically, let me explain.
So the initial.
Yeah.
Let me make the point. The initial spark was a young grandson sees his grandfather being attacked, and he then responds. So it's easy to talk in theory. So in real life, if I'm a Christian and I see someone attacking my grandfather, at that point I'm going to react to defend him.
Okay, let's explain this. Malcolm X.
Martin Luther King. That was my mistake.
Okay. Malcolm X was a man of violence. Do you understand? And then Martin Luther King, was he a man of violence? No, he wasn't.
Malcolm X wasn't a man of violence.
He created a lot of violence.
The teachings of Malcolm X are to respond.
Violence.
There's a difference.
He was violent in what he didn't.
So you are saying, Stella, that the move to even start a protest is wrong because it's not biblical. And you're saying, as a Christian, you can't stand still and let people just tramp on you. At some point you should respond.
What I'm saying, I'm not saying that you should now go take man's hand and start attacking them. No, but then you can keep your protest, but you maintain it and you keep on going. Regardless if they're friends, you stand still. In the time of Martin Luther King, didn't they keep on doing the protest regardless of all the tear gases that came their way? At the end of the day, who came out with victory on their side? Look, for instance, Nelson Mandela. At first, we all know that he was an activist and created lots of attacks and first start with violence, but eventually he changed his ways. And although he's...
Yeah, but the story of Nelson Mandela is completely different to just everywhere in the world because it's changed within prison.
If I let you go on,
regardless, there was still a change. What I'm trying to say, it's not the point of where the change came from.
Think about two people in the same household, so Winnie Mandela and Nelson Mandela.
I'm about to come to them too, yes. So
I would have to stop you now. Thank you so much. If we go on this road, the argument would not end. But I mean, basically, I would just like to say that as Christians all around the world, we need to pray. We need to pray for Christians all around the world. The truth is, it's not. In the Old Testament, it was okay, if you fought God's people, there were times God even instructed his people to go out there and fight, and he would go with them and give them the victory. But in the New Testament, that's not necessarily the case. I think you could, the Bible says the warfare of the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. So at the end of the day, Christians all around the world should be fighting this battle more on their knees than going forward to attack anybody, because at the end of the day, things just get out of control. Like I said, I'm not sure they set out to cause any kind of trouble, but at the end of the day, the police comes forward attacking them. You know how the devil can take control of a situation, and the matter just turns, the way it's not supposed to turn. So at the end of the day, we just need to pray and know that God is not sleeping. He would fight for his people. Yeah. Okay. All right. We are going to move on quickly to our next one. It says end of life care should be free. This is something that MPs are just beginning to fight for. We've got a clip to show you, and when we come back, Stella will talk to us about end-of-life care for elderly people. We'll be right back.
Recent reports have highlighted examples of very poor care for people who are dying. Poor communication was often the problem. People in the final stages of life had not always understood that they were dying. In other instances, people didn't know the person they were caring for was going to die. More generally, individuals didn't always understand the words being used. People often hear the terms palliative care or end-of-life care for the first time when someone they know is dying or won't get better. They might hear the words used by medical or care professionals, or they might see the terms written in a professional context, such as on signs, in leaflets or guides, in the media, or perhaps in online information. In fact, they may hear a range of words and terms that they simply don't understand. And all this when they might be feeling sad, scared about the future, tired, frustrated, angry about what has happened, overwhelmed, in the dark about what to expect. We asked over 1,000 people what they thought and felt about these two terms, palliative care and end of life. We collected views from both the public and professionals in a variety of ways. And they said,
end of life care, I mean, I suppose that sounds more terminal, whereas with palliative care, I suppose it gives a degree of hope for family and loved ones.
I haven't got any idea what it means.
I think end-of-life care is better because it's more honest.
I think end-of-life care is easier for people to understand.
Palliative care for me is looking after people in their last weeks, months.
To me, it's not about prolonging life, but just making the end of life more comfortable.
Well, palliative care really is the support and care given to me where I'm terminal patient.
Palliative care has negative connotations with cancer, with hospices.
In a sense, doesn't mean anything because I know the word, but I've never actually been instructed or discovered what it means.
The findings illustrate the confusion, the impact and the range of understanding and feelings towards the two phrases. Social care and health staff need to communicate in a caring way to people who are dying and their families, making sure that whatever terms or words they use, that people are clear about what's being said.
They're in the last days and hours of their life and they want to be at home, surrounded by their loved ones and in familiar surroundings.
In response to those figures, a statement from the Department of Health read, "We are committed to improving and increasing the choice available for patients at the end of their life so they can choose where to spend their last days. As part of our work to improve end-of-life care, the current system for funding palliative care is being reviewed, with the intention to introduce a new system in 2015 to 2016. Macmillan says there's no medical reason for terminal patients not to spend their last moments at home if that's what they want. It insists that providing free social care for those at the end of their life is vital and allowing that to happen.
Amazing. From the clip you could see that there are people who don't even understand the concept of end-of-life care or palliative care. So, Stella, can you talk to us about end-of-life care, especially for people with terminal disease?
Okay, first of all, end of care, like, it basically is for, like, for instance, the elderly, like you said before, who have probably the last couple of months left of their lives, or you have the terminally ill disease who probably have the last 6 months of their lives to live, and they know they're about to die due to a terminal ill disease like cancer, for instance.
Dementia.
Yeah, dementia and so on. So basically what happens is that the MPs are trying to make this free, to bring care for them and make it free for them available, whether it's to bring it to their homes or to keep, if they want to and they decide to stay in the hospital, they can stay in the hospital.
So regardless of where they choose to be, they should get the best of care.
Yeah, best of care. So in that way, that, for instance, their families could be with them, their friends could be with them, they could be shown love at the last days. I don't believe that they should be paying for care, especially if they're ill. They never asked for the sickness, they didn't ask for the disease, they didn't ask to die in the next 6 months. So I do believe that we should help them and let them have the best care they can have
before they go. So in your opinion, it's a good move. It's a great
it's a good move. It's a great move, yes. It'll bring joy to them and happiness at their last days. So
just to play advocate, some people might argue that a way they could pay could be from their will. So once they've passed, say, a small section of a chunk of their will, could be saying, what do you think about that?
No. I think that's being greedy. Okay. No, selfish.
There's a lot of people who die with a lot of money, so then some people...
If you have a lot of money,
you don't even require that care in the
you wouldn't
first
be
place.
allowed to have that kind of care. So.
Exactly. It's for people who
are less privileged and don't have much.
Okay. All right, thank you, Stella. Next, we are going to be looking at black deaths at police hands and why some black people have a negative opinion of police officers. Now, last year on this program, it was like at least once a week, there was a report of a black person, especially black unharmed people being killed by police officers. Now, 2015, we've had several cases of same issue, you know, and we're just in the first quarter. On the 6th of March, a Madison police officer shot and killed a black teenager after the youth allegedly assaulted the officer. He was, however, unarmed. And then just a few days later, on the 10th, Anthony Hill, a 27-year-old Air Force veteran, was killed again by a police officer. Antoine, you need to talk to us about this. What's going on? Why do we see a reoccurrence of these killings? And most of the times, the victims are unharmed.
I think with black people and the police, the relationship has developed over time. Some people think it's very simple, whereby it's just now, because of social media, we see videos, we see Instagram pictures, we see protests, and everything's in the media and it's blown up. But really, it's a more deeper situation that's developed over time. So I'm going to take you a little bit back into the kind of time of slavery, whereby when the Emancipation Proclamation happened in America, whereby slaves were free, they weren't technically free. You went from being a slave, whereby you had a master and an overseer, and then you became a wage slave, whereby you had to stay on the plantation, and if you left the plantation without your documents to say that you had a master, or you were free, or you had a job, you could be arrested for vagrancy. So in the mind of a black person, you began to see the police officer as the new officer. So it's like overseer, officer, officer. That's why the word itself is quite correlated. So over time, moving on from slavery, you got to the point where you had the civil rights era. So as we were discussing earlier, if you're protesting with Martin Luther King, you're protesting with Malcolm X, you're protesting with anybody, you could be confronted with dogs, the police, fire hoses, attacked in your home for doing absolutely nothing. And if something happens to you, say you work in a business and the owner of this business is white, and you go to the police with some kind of complaint that they've done such and such to you, and the police officer himself isn't helpful, or they're disrespectful, or you end up getting arrested yourself. Like people talk of the the prison industrial complex, whereby there's like a chain of from school to prison for black males, whereby you can do something very simple that should just really be a ticket, or you can do absolutely nothing at all and you could get arrested. So
can we assume that sometimes it's down to colour?
To an extent, I say it's down to psychology. So as you're a white police officer and you're growing up as a child, so I always think that any industry, any public body reflects the ignorance of society. So even in a hospital, if society treats black people such and such, you as a doctor or a nurse is still a member of that society. So you have to think really hard to not be as ignorant as everyone else. So the police force in the 60s and 80s was very ignorant because American society was very ignorant. But now in 2015, you'd expect better from them. But what's happened, the perception or the image of black people in the media is still pretty bad. You can turn on your TV, you can see black people as criminals and as thugs, whether it's fictional or actual news stories, because there's not so many positive images of black people. It reflects on how society views black people. So not every person has a black friend. There's a statistic that only out of 10 white people, only one of them will have a black friend. So if you're that 9, your perception of black people comes from what you see on TV. So when you're a police officer, you don't step out of your house. I always think there's few very inherently evil people. So the officers that killed Tamir Rice, the small boy who had a toy gun, or the officer that killed Mike Brown, I don't think he stepped out of his house that day thinking, I'm going to kill a black person. But the situation set itself up for him to be able to do that. So in his mind, he viewed those people as potential threats. And that's what we need to break in society. We need to get to a point in which you see a black person like you see any other person. You see a person.
Do you think that the media is to blame for this, bringing this kind of ideology?
I think it plays a part, because as black people, we are a minority. So a lot of people who aren't black may not interact with black people that much. So you build up stereotypes, you build up schemas whereby you think black people act a certain way.
So how do we begin to change these stereotypes?
We change stereotypes by promoting a different image. So I'll give you an example. About this promotion? Who's going to bring about the promoting? It's both internal and external for black people. So I don't blame hip hop, but hip hop plays a part because in the early 90s, there was Public Enemy, and Public Enemy perpetuated political hip hop, whereby they said, look,
Antoine, you know what? We're running out of time, and there's so much to speak about this. You'll be back here next week. Yeah. We will talk about this. But one final word. As a black person, how do you respond to police officer?
I think for you to say, I'll say this, even though it goes against everything that people talk about being free or being revolutionary or whatever, the only way you can get a chance of surviving in any life is just to comply.
Comply.
You can be revolutionary tomorrow when you're alive, or you can fight back, or you can quote the law today and die. In America especially. So if you're stopped by the police and you're American...
regardless of what you think...
remember, you don't have a gun.
Exactly.
So it's better for you to just literally be subservient and say, OK, officer, what do you want?
Compliance.
And then you get to the police station alive and you make your complaint alive. You get a lawyer.
Afterwards, but... when
to fight there and then is when you put yourself in a situation where someone can abuse their power.
Exactly.
So I think as a person, your main responsibility is to stay safe. So you can protest tomorrow on Facebook.
Exactly.
You can protest with your friends the following week. But if you argue with an officer there and then, you get your situation where you could be the next Eric Garner.
Exactly.
And Eric Garner didn't bring that on himself because no one deserves to be choked out. But at the same point, you have to think, how can I stay safe? Amazing.
So last word for every black person is compliance. You see a police officer, regardless of what, comply. That's how much we can take today. Thank you, Antoine, for being here. Thank you, Stella. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Until tomorrow, when we bring you more amazing trending stories from all around the world, I'm Ray Osazwa, signing out. We'll be here tomorrow. Bye.